Hello, tea sippers. Welcome to an all-new episode of Clock the Tea with Dr. Long. Grab your mugs. There's a lot to get to. Hello, tea sippers, and welcome to another episode of Clock the Tea with Dr. Long. This is your host, Mark Long, and you know I bring you the tea fresh every single week. And just starting right off, James Comey has been indicted again, and he turned himself in. And it's very confusing coming at a time where why aren't we focused on the cost of living and affordability? So we're going after Jimmy Kimmel and James Comey now? Take a listen to what the ladies have to say on The View.
Very much so, to me, qualifies for a vindictive prosecution, and that is against the law. So you've got these two indictments. No. This is not going anywhere. And the last thing I'll say about this is they have to prove intent. They have to prove that there was an imminent threat, that this threat, he knowingly and willfully made a threat to take the life of the president. And as you so eloquently pointed out, how can they prove that with some seashells on the beach with a post that he took down immediately? This is going nowhere.
What Patel said was, I think it was Patel, said they would ask other people. That's one of the ways.
Well, who are they going to ask? The people on the beach?
People.
Here's my thing, though.
There's nothing there.
We're coming off of the third assassination attempt on the President of the United States. I would like the FBI and DOJ to look for actual true threats against the President of the United States so that we catch those targets before we have a situation like we did this past weekend. This, to me, an Instagram post with seashells, and any of us who spend a lot of time in bars knows 86 means throw them out or take it off the menu. That is not a real serious threat. It's a waste of resources. But my bigger issue is this. So many of my friends and family supported the president, and they voted for him because of cost of living issues. This is happening right now when gas is so expensive. It's up $1.2 or $1.25 a gallon, more than it was, a 40% jump since February. You have 62% of people not even participating in the labor force. That's the highest level since the pandemic. You have more than 4% unemployment. That is what people wanted Donald Trump to focus on. I don't really care what James Comey is doing at any given time.
And I truly don't think, T-Steppers, that anybody really gives a shit about what James Comey is doing. Here's the thing. CNN has already reported that Comey denies any intent to threaten and says that he remains not afraid and he believes in the judiciary system here. And CNN has also highlighted that Comey previously faced charges that were dismissed due to an improper way that the appointed U.S. attorney was handling the case and just kind of the way that they appointed the U.S. attorney. So here's the thing. Right now, there's a lot of blame game going on from this administration. So we know that this is I think this is the third attempt on the President of the United States in regards to the assassination that happened over the weekend for the Correspondents' Dinner. But this administration is handling this situation in a way where they're pointing fingers at the media. And now we know that there's reports that the FCC is targeting ABC after Jimmy Kimmel made a joke that infuriated the White House. And they said the joke that Jimmy Kimmel said was something along the lines of a very light roast, but it was in regards to the President of the United States pretty much having an age difference from Melania. And the administration is interpreting that as Jimmy Kimmel inciting violence on the president. I don't know what kind of paranoid and delusional world that these people live in. But that is the most disgusting thing for this administration to do, is to go after, one, the freedom of speech. They say the most egregious, terrible stuff like death to Democrats, by the way. And then flipping the narrative to point fingers at the media all the time. It's just not going to work. I don't know what these MAGA cult members believe they're doing in regards to changing the rhetoric and a narrative for the American people to convince us that violence is being incited on the president. Are you kidding me? The violence that they incite on people all over the country needs to be studied. The violence that they do in regards to promoting this white ideology that white is the way you need to be, and you have to be Christian, and you have to be Republican, and you have to be a conservative, and you can't be gay, and you have to do certain things, and you have to like the President of the United States. When has that ever been the case? And it seems very authoritarian, not only to mention that this has happened before, where we've had leaders that were a bit more authoritarian, but not to this point where they're trying to change the narrative and completely shoot down facts. What Alyssa Farah Griffin and Sunny were saying on The View is completely accurate. I'm not a lawyer, but I am a political commentator, and Alyssa has her proven record by working in the White House, and now you have members who, even previous co-hosts like Meghan McCain, coming out of the blue saying things like Alyssa Farah Griffin is not a real Republican, and it's just weird. It's giving jealousy. People don't like facts anymore. And the issue with facts is the fact that you can't even joke. You can't joke anymore. You can't be a comedian. The President of the United States is failing miserably at his job. The cost of living is still high. Prices are all over the place. We're in this war that doesn't make any sense. And I think, if you can't take a joke, you damn sure shouldn't be President of the United States. No one is inciting violence on you. James Comey posted 8647, and everyone in this country with a brain knows that when you say to 86 something, it means to get rid of, and it's more of like a restaurant term. So in what way, first of all, yeah, get rid of him. Impeach his ass. We don't like you. We don't like you or your wife, President Donald Trump. And I believe that Americans are being forced in a way to silence ourselves and feel scared. I'm not scared of that guy. And no one in this country should ever be scared of the President of the United States. I don't care. Your job is a risky job. You're a leader of the free world in America. People are going to threaten you. People are going to threaten families. That doesn't make it right. No, it does not. But that's a part of the job. And it is very disgusting that these people are continuing to make sure that people are silenced in the media. Well, here's the thing. We're not going anywhere. And we're going to speak more about the hypocrisy and the ludicrous behavior that comes from this administration as they try to continue and deflect from the Epstein files. It's another deflection. And President Donald Trump, we already know that you are a pedophile and that you and your wife used to hang out with people who do terrible things to others. So what puts you in a position to just make sure that Americans can move past and forgive you for the circle that you're in? No. I don't care how much money you have. I don't have to like you, and neither does the American people. Alright, Tea-Sippers, shifting gears a little bit because a major decision happened this week in the Supreme Court. Now, before we jump into this, I do want to give a disclaimer that this is quite the emotional issue, especially for a lot of people of color, because the Voting Rights Act was intended to promote equality and make sure that people have the right to vote in this country. And how that somehow is being weakened right now by the Supreme Court is beyond me. And the conservative majority ruled against it and ruled in the favor of this horrible decision. That doesn't really surprise a lot of Democrats, but it definitely is a point of contention right now in regards to racial gerrymandering. Take a listen to this.
The U.S. Supreme Court dealt a blow to the landmark Voting Rights Act on Wednesday after knocking out a major pillar of the law that had protected against racial discrimination in voting and representation. In the 6 decades since it was signed, the Voting Rights Act became one of the most consequential laws in the nation's history, preventing discrimination against minorities at the ballot box. It also helped elect Black and Hispanic representatives at all levels of government. But on Wednesday, the Supreme Court hollowed out the landmark civil rights era law by striking down a majority Black congressional district in Louisiana. That ruling could provide an open door for political mapmakers to undermine minority representation. The Voting Rights Act was signed into law by President Lyndon B. Johnson on August 6, 1965, 5 months after the Bloody Sunday attack on civil rights marchers in Selma, Alabama, gave momentum to the bill.
Wherever there is discrimination, this law will strike down all restrictions used to deny the people the right to vote.
In recent years, AP reporter Gary Fields sat down with some of the people who were pivotal to the birth of the act.
After having talked to these individuals and to a number of other people about why voting rights was so important, the reason for why they were so important then hasn't changed now. in a democracy or a republic such as ourselves, the vote is the thing that you have that is the coin of the realm that allows you to say, I'm a full participant in this society, in this endeavor that we call the United States of America.
The question now is, what comes next for minority representatives and the communities they represent?
Wow. So before diving into this egregious decision that the Supreme Court just did in regards to the Voting Rights Act, I think it's only fair that we talk about a little bit of the history in regards to the right to vote and what that looked like for groups that didn't have representation. So we know that women struggled with getting the right to vote, first and foremost. And these laws were actually intended as a way to open a door for more groups beyond women to also have the right to vote. We know that white women got the right to vote by going in the streets and making sure that their voices were heard and showing the American public in the 20s and before that women deserved equal representation under the law. And what that meant is giving them the right to have their voices be heard with who should be president of the United States. Most importantly, furthermore, as we dive into the Voting Rights Act that came about in the 50s, or in the 60s, as well. These voting acts and these laws were put in these policies were put into place because of what was happening. So I know that this president and the MAGA group wants to eradicate history, but what happened was that there was this huge uproar from what happened in Selma, Alabama, in regards to this segregation in the South and how violent the police officers in the town was towards African Americans with lynchings and specifically at this non-violent rally, they were attacked. And it was on full display so that people all over the country can see with the invention of the television. So the fact that that hatred was put on full display, the president of the United States at that time had no other choice but to meet with civil rights leaders and bring the temperature down and make sure that people knew that under the law, you have the right to vote. Now, we also know that a lot of conservatives lack the understanding of what it means to be racist. In this decision, this is a completely racist decision by the Supreme Court. Not only is it a racist decision, they're trying to twist this, because I read a few conservative articles just to see what their perspective was. They're trying to twist this to make it seem like they're trying to be anti-racist by making sure that there isn't a predominantly black district. First and foremost, every district in this country might as well be a predominantly white district because white people are the majority in this country. So there's just been so much underhanded, slick decisions that the president of the United States is doing with some of these conservative people off kilter and off site and in private conversations that they're having with their constituents, where some of these decisions are basically coming from the top in a way to make sure that the president of the United States can stay president and not face any repercussions come this year with the midterms, because there's going to be a huge pushback against this egregious conservative right-wing whatever this is. This is not Gilead. So they better believe that all of this undoing and everything they're doing right now does them no favors in regards to re-election. It does them no favors with younger generations who set out voting. And I think what they're trying to do is trying to portray to the American people that there is a huge following, a huge cult following with the MAGA base, when in reality, I don't even think there is a huge following. I think there's been so much misleading with this administration and with this president that I can't even trust that how things are panning out is true. They already went after the 2020 election, said that that was stolen, and now they're still focusing on that, having won the 2024 election. It's ridiculous. I can't even say I want to pray for them, because here's the thing. At this point, the prayer that I need to say doesn't match whatever kind of prayers that these people are putting out. Like, this is getting absurd. And my heart hurts for people of color in this country who have to turn on the news and see that the Voting Rights Act was weakened. What kind of American wants to live in a place where you can look on TV and see your history and be proud of something, and then see it get weakened by the Supreme Court? So I don't think this fight is over, and we already know how midterms are going to go for these people. Because when you're racist nowadays, yeah, y'all might think that helped you win your 2024 election, but majority of this country, in my opinion, I don't believe is that freaking racist to the point where they're not willing to look at this and be like, that's a little sketchy. Or I could be completely wrong, and you all need to get out there and vote. All right, tea sippers. So let's keep pushing on, because I want to talk a little bit about this narrative that is coming out from the right in regards to Erica Kirk. And I know it's a controversial topic that a lot of people don't want to talk about, but I think we have to shed some light on how awful it is that we are being put in a position where we are dealing with someone who is turning the narrative on comedy and making it seem like that white people are being attacked. First of all, I'm not even going to stay too much on this topic with her. I give her condolences for losing her husband to political violence. But I will say enough is enough in regards to going on camera and pretending like someone is doing whiteface against you. First of all, how dare you? They don't even know the history of blackface. For someone who is white to be so comfortable enough to say someone was doing whiteface on them, like White Chicks, like the movie, like comedy, white people are having an issue with racism and their fragility around that. So because they're having so much of an issue with fragility and making it seem like they're such a target all the time, I think we should probably talk about blackface. So take a listen to the history of blackface. And then we'll come back and have a quick conversation on what it means to be black in America.
The controversy over Virginia Governor Ralph Northam and blackface hasn't yet cost Northam his job. But it apparently means the country needs to have a conversation, again, about the toxic strain in American cultural history known as minstrelsy. So it's time for a little education. Just in case there are Americans out there who may be too afraid to ask their best black friend why it's so offensive.
Minstrelsy is a performance tradition that started in the mid-1800s. And what it was whites dressing up, caricaturing African Americans, mimicking their dance, their language, their music, providing comic relief for their audiences. Minstrelsy operates in two ways. In one way, it separates whiteness as something very distinct for blackness and frames blackness as something of the other and lesser than white cultural habits, ways of speech, song, and dance. It objectifies African Americans and distances them from their humanity. It made them seem foolish, simple of mind, not intelligent, cheap, an image and a stereotype that people use as a lens to judge African Americans from here on out. It moved on to vaudeville, musical comedy, musical theater, and also into television, radio, and films. You'll find the remnants of minstrelsy in a lot of forms of popular culture. Think about some of your favorite film comedies or television shows, when white actors mimic African American speech patterns or breaking into a moonwalk. In some ways, they are taking on that same persona that the blackface entertainers did on the minstrel stage. I think blackface is a really complicated issue. I find it painful to see it in action. It's a reminder of the devaluation of who African Americans have been in this country. And so when we wrestle with that history and really start to understand it, I believe that's the first step to really ridding ourselves of these images.
All right, tea sippers, I'm going to put this plain and simple. So let me go ahead and just say this very plainly. This sudden outrage over whiteface, especially this thing that's trying to be echoed by Erica Kirk and the right, is just ridiculous. And it's the funniest plot twist since someone tried to ban books, right? And it shows you the party that doesn't believe in education, history, or even like understanding the years of oppression that people in this country have had to face, just in general. And for generations, blackface was considered prime time entertainment. Not fringe, not niche, not edgy, mainstream. Like family friendly, America's favorite laugh track. They would all gather around and see these shows. Not only that, lynching at the time was also something that was very common. And we know that people bought tickets, studios made money, politicians smiled for the cameras about it, and the whole thing was built on mocking black people, right? During the exact time where Jim Crow was happening and, you know, people were telling blacks where they could, where they could live, learn, work, sit, or even exist without fear. So blackface wasn't just a joke. It was pretty much like what the system looked like then and how black humanity was considered optional and how it was something that could be easily made fun of. And now suddenly in 2026, someone puts on some pale foundation for satire about racism and Karen behavior, and now is considered somehow that we are being racist towards whites. The math isn't mathing here. And because the part here where people are conveniently skipping over blackface and how it was never just comedy or whatever they're trying to say, actually doesn't do this administration any favors. You know, it makes people who are more curious able to look at history, and now they're going to either be offended or some of them are just not even going to care. And when someone tries to act like these two things are equal, it's not only historically wrong, it's disrespectful and it's racist, and it erases the very real harm that blackface has caused a lot of people in this country and how it also echoed throughout the systemic oppression up until this very day. And if we're going to talk about comedy, let's talk about the fact that blackface was considered hilarious at one point. Let's talk about how the same society that laughed at minstrel shows is suddenly delicate about whiteface and how white people need to be perceived and protecting the president. Because the truth is simple here, everybody. One is a costume and the other one was a political and dangerous and racist weapon that was used to keep certain groups quiet and made to feel like they are not a real human being. And I'm trying to tell y'all, history matters. Context matters. And if we're going to have this conversation, we're going to have it honestly, with receipts, without erasing books, with the understanding of what it means to be a black person in the United States of America and the hypocrisy that we have to deal with on an everyday basis from this administration, but also from people who are not even willing to understand the real history in this country. Who know certain things like blackface happened, but think that we all need to move past it. So much to the point where we're going after comedians, we're reversing the Voting Rights Act, and now we are making it seem like people like me, a person of color, has to cow down and be completely respectful to those who think less of me. Well, newsflash, here on Clock the Tea with Dr. Long, we're going to continue to spell. And the reads have just started. My foot is going to be in the neck of these crazy racist people until justice is served. Thanks for listening to another episode of Clock the Tea with Dr. Long. This is your host, Mark Long, and I bring it to you fresh every single week, and come back for more tea.